So I've stolen the lights off the Christmas tree because I wanted to make the background look a bit nicer. I think I just need to let go of Christmas, to be honest. Hi guys, welcome back to another video. Today I actually wanted to speak to you about my interview experience for medicine. I know that this year interviews are going to be a little bit different. Obviously, they're most likely going to be online, so I know that my experience is definitely not going to mirror exactly everyone's experience this year, but a lot of the structure and the types of questions are going to be the same. They're not going to be able to change the interview that much, so hopefully my advice will still be useful. Now, quick disclaimer before we get into the video, I actually only ever had one interview for medicine and I got an offer from that one interview, so I don't have lots of experience with interviews. I also have never done an MMI, so multiple mini interview style interview, so what I'll do is link below some videos that I think are more useful for those style of interviews. So let's rewind to January 2019. We were still kind of living a normal life back then, can you believe it? So at the time, I was actually training to be a science teacher. I was doing my PGCE in Southampton. I'd applied for medicine for the second year in a row. I'd been rejected from all 4 unis the previous year, and I decided that I was going to give it another go and apply while I was training to teach. I remember applying and thinking I was never going to get an interview because, well, I'd been hurt before. And the thing with Southampton is they take ages to get back to you. By January of last year, Queen Mary and King's had already rejected me. So Southampton was my only hope at this point because I'd applied for 4-year and 5-year. I was even trying to decide what school I wanted to work in once I qualified to be a teacher. So honestly, like, medicine just didn't seem to be on my horizon. And then on the 25th of January, I actually got an email in my inbox from Southampton inviting me to a selection day. Like, oh my God, I remember just being like staring at my laptop for like half an hour, like in silence, just like, I was like reading it again and again, like, are you sure? Like, has there been an admin error? Like, what? Yeah, I remember getting that interview and just thinking, even if I don't get in now, like, I finally got an interview. Like, I've applied for like 7 different med schools over 2 years and never been invited, and I've finally got an interview. So to me, that was an achievement in itself. And I was thinking, if I don't get in, they still considered me, and that means a lot. So I got this interview email and they'd given me 2 weeks notice before the interview. I was told that the interview was going to be split into a group task and then a panel interview with 2 people. So I had some idea of what was going to happen on the day. I'd also spoken to current med students about what to expect. So I did have a little bit of intel on how the day was going to go. So basically I went back into school the next day, but I had this secret, like I didn't want to tell anyone. At the time I felt guilty, like, I'm training to be a teacher and I'm trying to bail, like I haven't even qualified yet. My tutor at uni was like telling me I was going to be a great teacher, and then suddenly I was going to have to be like, nope, sorry. Anyway, those 2 weeks dragged, like literally dragged. I remember just like not being able to concentrate on planning lessons because I wanted to prepare for the interview, and going into work every day like I had this dirty little secret. Anyway, the test day came around and I lied. I just couldn't tell them the truth. So I told them that I was going to look around the school, and I wasn't. I was going to my interview. So, selection day. So my interview was at 11 AM. I woke up very early. I had not slept very well. I was thinking, this is it. This is my only chance. As much as I was just happy to get an interview, by the time the day rolled around, I was like, I've got to do it. I've got to get in. Like, this is my only chance. I got to campus. I remember just feeling really nervous. I was like really sweaty. Like, I sweat a lot when I'm nervous. I remember having this cardigan on and being really hot, but I knew if I took it off, I would just have these big sweat patches, so I had to just stay in this cardigan. I got to the hall where they were kind of greeting us. I signed in, I sat down, I got put on a table with 8 other candidates. I had a little bit of like chit chat with the table I was sat with, and I knew we were going to be doing the group task first, so I tried to learn all their names, kind of get to know a little bit about them. I don't know, I just felt like I would be a bit more comfortable in the group task if I'd like made an effort. But basically we went in, there were 3 people watching us, and we sat around this table. We had a piece of paper and we turned over the piece of paper and it gave us a scenario, and we had to debate that scenario for 20 minutes. They were looking to see how we performed in a group situation, but that's not just about, you know, getting the answer right and talking. I tried really hard to create opportunities for other people to speak. I tried to tell people when they made a good point. But honestly though, like, my personality type, I'm not very dominant. I do struggle in situations like this to stand out. This was definitely my weaker half of the interview. I don't think they really cared what we were saying, like whether or not our answers were right. I think they did care more about our behaviours, so I did try to focus on that. And you don't get any feedback from the interview, so whether or not I did that well, I'll never know. Then we had a 10-minute break where we just sat back down at the table, and then I think Most of us are more relaxed by this point, I think, because we'd done the group task and we'd all been bonding through that. So we were a bit more chatty around the table at this point. And then we all had to line up and we got called into a hall and you just got assigned a desk. So I got assigned my desk, I went and sat down. I had two men interviewing me. One was a research scientist and one was a doctor who worked on the graduate course. Now, they were kind of doing the good cop, bad cop thing. Like, the research scientist was very friendly and malleable to my answers, whereas the doctor would stop me and push me more, like, for more detail in my answers. So basically they started off with more generic questions, you know, the why do you want to be a doctor, what skills do you have, things like that. They actually had my personal statement printed out in front of me. They just started to pick it apart. As the interview progressed, it got a lot harder. The questions were a lot more out there and not what I was expecting. I think they're looking more in that situations as to how you react to a question that you're not expecting and how you tackle it. So they were kind of like abstract kind of answers. And I remember at one point, I knew what I was saying was complete like BS, and they were looking at me like, what you're saying is complete BS. But what I did is I was like, at the end I was like, but what do you think? I think and then they told me what they were trying to get basically from my answer, and I was like, oh yeah, like didn't even think of it like that. Really, yeah, that makes so much sense. But as the interview was going on, I felt more and more confident. Honestly, the 20 minutes just went really quickly. At the end of the interview, they asked me if I had any questions, and I had two prepared. And I have Jack, my boyfriend, to thank for that. He said to me, have you got a question prepared to ask? And I was like, nah, they're not gonna ask me to ask them a question. It's not a job interview. And he was like, no, you should prepare a question. So I came up with two in the end. I asked them, why do you think I should come to Southampton? They don't need to know that I didn't have any other interviews. And I asked them, do you think there's a difference between the doctors who come out of graduate medicine and the doctors who come out of undergraduate medicine? They actually really liked that question, and they spoke for quite a while about the differences between the two courses. And then it was over. It was over. Honestly, it went really quickly. So yeah, I remember walking home, I rang my mum and I told her everything that happened, and she said, it sounds like it went really well. And I said, I think it did. Don't know whether or not I'll get onto the graduate course. But because I'd applied for both undergraduate and graduate, I knew I had an extra chance there. And obviously in the end, I got into undergraduate. I never got any feedback on my interview, so I don't know what it was in the end that put me on the undergraduate instead of graduate. No, when I came away from it, I had a feeling. I just had a feeling. And I felt like I got on well with the panel interviewers, and I think that's where I performed the best. Okay, so you've got your interview offer, and now you're thinking, what do I do? How do I prepare? Obviously, I don't think I'm allowed to share exact questions because I don't want to get in trouble with my university. So I'm just going to skirt around that and say that the first thing I would do is write a list of as many questions as you can possibly think of that you might get asked. So the generic questions like, why do you want to be a doctor? Why medicine and not nursing? What skills do you think you have to be a doctor? What did you learn on your work experience? Think of an example of a time where you've used leadership skills. Think about a time where you've been in a team. So once you've come up with your list, then I would go through and bullet point answers. Do not write out full answers. If you write out your answers in full, you run the risk of learning those and sounding really scripted on the day. And I just think if you bullet point them, you're going to get all the key things that you want to say in, but on the day it will just come out a bit more naturally. That's just how I would do it. I think people can tell when you've rehearsed something. Once you've got your list of questions and your rough answers, I probably recommend trying to get a family member or a friend to FaceTime you and then give them those questions and practice answering them over the internet, because obviously this year it's going to be online. You need to get used to talking on Zoom. Get the person who's practiced with you to give you some honest feedback. Constructive criticism goes a long way. Another really important thing is to make sure that you are aware of all the current issues going on in the NHS and in the wider kind of healthcare topic. Make sure that you've read around the issue and you know the key facts, and form your own opinion on it, because they might ask you an opinion, like what do you think? Make sure that you've not just researched the issue, but you actually have your own opinion on it that you can defend. Just some examples of current issues right now, there's literally so many, but these are a few. Coronavirus, antibiotic resistance, ageing population, Brexit and the impact that that has on the NHS and funding, obesity, and even the privatisation of the NHS. There are literally so many. Make sure that you spend a good proportion of your preparation time looking up these issues, reading about them, and making sure you're confident enough to speak about them just for a minute or two. You don't need to be an expert in the subject. Just make sure that you're confident taking part in a conversation about that issue. Another really important tip is to make sure that you've researched in detail the med school that you are applying to. Make sure that you know the course structure, what kind of curriculum is it, are you going to be doing problem-based learning, are you going to be doing systems-based learning. Make sure that you are really kind of clued up on how that works within that university. When they ask you, why do you want to come to this university, it will look so much better if you can tell them specifically what attracts you to the course. They don't know, you might have 4 interviews to 4 different unis, and they want to see that you really want to go to their med school and that you've thought about it and decided why you want to go there. One thing I mentioned at my interview was that I liked how Southampton has a spiralling curriculum, and that basically means that throughout the 5 years they go over topics multiple times. And I spoke about how I feel like that would benefit me because of how I learn. So those are all my preparation tips, and I guess I just want to leave you with one last tip, and that is for the actual day of the interview. You can do all this preparation, but on the day you need to make sure that you look like you really want to go to that uni and that you're excited to get in. Be really enthusiastic and smile. Try not to come across as a robot who's just learnt all the answers. Try and be a human. Try and come across as an excited human being who wants to go to that university, and they will be able to sense that off of you, even through a computer screen. And yeah, that's it. Those are my tips. I hope in some way, shape or form they have been helpful. If you have enjoyed, don't forget to like this video and subscribe. It would mean a lot to me. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next video.